Welcome, folks, to another edition of Midweek with Eric Smith. Great to see you all back again. Thanks to all of you who have joined in. And my guest tonight is Jeff Landicho, and Jeff is in the mix right now. I'm going to click on this, add him in, and then... Landich, how are you, sir?
Yo.
How you keeping?
Good. There's always that awkward, like, get settled, try to get on live. Whenever I see these videos, it's always interesting. I've never, like I said, I never done one of these. So,
well, I appreciate you doing it. And I was gonna go sans hat tonight. I was doing my Pat Riley slick back. Maybe I'll do it here. I'm looking a little greasy tonight.
My brother said he'll give me $100 if I do this without a hat on. I was like,
oh yeah, $100, man.
Might have to up it a little bit though, because
if I do it with a hat, will you give me 50?
Maybe.
For folks that don't know, and you should know, and many people watching do know, but for those that are watching that maybe aren't as familiar with the basketball world, especially behind the scenes, Jeff is a producer and director at NBA TV Canada, and he is the creator of Open Gym. And I will say this right off the bat. I've said this a couple of times on Twitter. I've said this on some radio shows. I don't know, Jeff, if you've heard this or not, but to me, what I've been watching for the last 5 weeks with The Last Dance and the fabulous ESPN documentary, as great as it is, as it was, and I won't give any spoilers for those that haven't seen the entire thing, we've been spoiled now for 6 years getting The Last Dance on a weekly basis with Open Gym, because everything I saw in The Last Dance, from one-on-one player interviews to interviews with other people connected to said player, whomever the subject may be that week, to broadcasters, to writers, to management, to fans, to coaches, executives, you name it. What you guys have been churning out since the show came on the air in 2014 is as good, if not better, than what I watched on The Last Dance in the last 5 weeks. So kudos to you and your team. And I'll start right there. How did this idea come about? And we'll get into how difficult it may be to execute on a weekly basis.
It was, I wouldn't say it was a winding road, but it was a pretty long road. I started with NBA TV Canada, Raptors TV back in the day, in '08, and started off doing rolling tape and supporting the live shows and the pre and post game shows and all that, and then quickly I started producing my own shows, X's and O's with Jonesy and Sherm, and some Floor Level and a few other shows. And then I quickly found the love that I had kind of realized in school, as far as storytelling and documentary style, features and programming. And then I slowly started doing more Raptors content. So Behind the Draft and within NBA Excel, as producer of NBA Excel, doing little short documentaries on that show. NBA Excel was a key point in my career because, first of all, I love the show back in Sportsnet with Cabby and Nam. I love the show. And like years later, I ended up becoming the lead producer of the show. So that was a dream of mine. And within that, NBA Excel gives you an opportunity to just do a variety of things. And one of the things was like short documentary style features. And that was my first taste of it. And I quickly became the features guy at Raptors TV. And so it was about a four-year stretch where I was doing features like DeMar DeRozan's rookie year, documenting his entire rookie year. We went to Vilnius in Lithuania and did a whole documentary on Jonas, and then Behind the Draft and some training camp kind of long form documentaries, and it was in 2012, BC's last year. Before the season started, we decided to finally pitch the idea of like a full season show, and at the time the association had been out. 24/7 was really popular with all the hockey stuff that they were putting out. Right. So this type of content was already kind of just becoming relevant and becoming more accepted. And I remember I put the proposal together, and I was in the preseason meeting with all the marketing team, the rep from the marketing team, and the broadcast, and the broadcast representatives, and I was ready to pitch the idea to BC. And before I was able to pitch it, he just kind of off the cuff was just like, I want to do something like the association with the Raptors.
Yeah.
And provide all access for the entire season, and just do it for the whole year. And everyone in the meeting, they all knew that I was about to propose this show, and we all looked at each other like, well, here you go, and just handed over the proposal. And he was on board from the beginning. Dwayne Casey was also in that meeting, and he was on board because he was going into his second year. It was after the lockout year, and he knew the value of promoting the guys, and the team was in a transition period, so he knew that any type of exposure for the guys and stories that kind of showcase who these players are was going to be valuable content, and for the fans trying to kind of hop on board with his team, they were on board right away. So that was it. It was it. Everything lined up perfectly, and then 8 years later, we're still here doing the show, and it culminated last year with the championship, which is an unbelievable. When you look at like Open Gym and the story it's told from the beginning, from season 1 till last year, it's just a crazy ride, a 8-year last dance, so to speak.
I want to hit a bunch of different angles on this, but the thing that stands out to me about even this pitch that you're talking about, and I want to get to the pitch in a second. One of the things that I respected at the time, and still all these years later continue to respect, and this isn't to say that Masai Ujiri isn't like this, or other executives for other teams aren't like this, but Brian Colangelo was a guy, as a president and general manager, who knew everything and was involved in everything.
Yeah.
And some people may have said, to a fault, and I never took it that way. To me, it was a guy, from the paint color on the walls,
absolutely, yeah,
to the tickets that were being printed, to the players that were being signed or traded for, to the whatever it was, he wanted to know and did know, and if he didn't know, he would find out every detail of the organization and had his hand in damn near every single decision, from the smallest detail to the biggest detail.
Yeah, you took the word. I was about to use that example too, like him picking the color of the wallpaper and everything like that. Yeah, he knew the value of this type of show and this type of content, and for him to have the foresight and give the green light, because I feel like the Lakers released the same type of program. They actually still have it going, I believe. But it's more of a network show, so no one else gets to see it. It's not on digital. It's on local TV in LA. But I feel like we are the Lakers and the Raptors are the only two teams that's had this type of access and this type of programming since when we started. So, yeah, kudos to him. It was actually it's a funny story about the name Open Gym. We struggled for a while trying to figure out what we were going to call the show, and it was actually Brian, Mark Eversley, who, shout out to Mark Eversley, congrats on the new gig, that were talking for weeks about like what we were going to name the show, and Mark Eversley kind of mentioned Open Gym, and just to kind of play off the whole idea of you go to a gym and everything's open, access for everybody. And I once he mentioned that to me and mentioned it to Brian, we were both like, that has a nice ring to it. It's a little unique. It's unique but it's still told a little bit of had a couple different meanings, and it just stuck. And I know after the second and third year there was talk about like probably changing the name to be more on brand with the Raptors, but the first couple years there had been so much already clout with that name, and we decided to keep Open Gym, and yeah, it's fit, and it's just become a part of the culture over the last 7-8 years.
So Landicho, tell me, and listen, folks, I call Jeff Landich, or so I'm gonna fall back and forth here. It's the nicknames.
Hmm.
It's the way I know him. It feels
What's
weird calling him Jeff. Hello,
yeah?
Jeffrey. So
What's what's Took's guy's name?
Toot guy. Oh yeah.
No, what do you call me from
Uh,
Beachcombers?
yes, I know. And why am I brain cramping? I gave you the name. Oh my God, Relic. Yeah.
Relic.
And that's a really dated reference,
Yeah.
but for old guys like us, anybody that's maybe 45 plus,
Hmm.
Beachcombers, Google it, or go just Google my guy Relic from the Beachcombers, and there you have it right there.
Yeah.
But there's some young folks watching as well. And a lot of people have been watching this show, Jeff, that are they're aspiring broadcasters. But listen, not everybody wants to work on the broadcast side in front of the camera or behind the mic, et cetera. They want to work behind the scenes. They want to do producing, directing, things like that. So that's why I wanted to have you on for a number of reasons. So take me through whatever details you can give without giving away any company secrets here. What did your pitch look like? Like what is involved in a pitch when you sit down with management and you're sitting down with the president and general manager? And even though he kind of, he trumped you to some extent by spitting out this idea first, but yet you had something in front of him. You had a presentation prepared. What does that involve? Because I'll tell you, that's not something I've even done, is sat down and pitched a show other than sending an email. Hey, here's an idea. What do you think of this? But I've never formally put together a pitch.
Yeah, it's hard to remember exactly what we had there, but I know a synopsis is always the key, right? You wanna have the entire focus and paint the entire picture of what this entire story is about in that one strong line, just so you right away can get a sense of what you're looking at, and what type of story and what direction the story is gonna take. And then there's, for me, I'm a visual person, so I'm pretty sure we had a lot of visuals in there. We had already had a lot of references, the past 3-4 years of stuff we had done. So using examples and references to kind of paint a picture again of what the style and the look was gonna kind of feel like and look like, and then just breaking down what the show looks like from an episodic standpoint, and kind of give just examples of how it's going to be released and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of info, but at the same time you want to be real concise with everything, and not have things too wordy and long-winded. You want to be straight to the point, and a good one pager is always a great way to start, but the next step would be a full detailed look at some of like what the episodes are going to look like, some of the budget stuff and all that that's involved. But the key always is to be concise and be powerful with the points that you're making.
So when you ultimately pitch this, and Brian and the organization are already on board with it from the get-go, how does it go from idea, conception to actual execution, and that first episode that's being put together, the first idea in your head for the first episode? Walk me through how it all kind of comes together, and then we'll kind of obviously get to what it's evolved into over the years.
It was, you don't want to really do TV shows this way, but it was kind of like at the time, because it was such a new thing, that we didn't have many resources. So we're trying to kind of show our bosses and our network that this show has some value. So we tried to do everything that we could. I edited the show. I logged all the footage. It was just myself and Jeff Rocky who shot the show exclusively. And we did what we could with just the two of us. And I wouldn't suggest doing a full-length documentary with just two people. But at the time, that's what we had to kind of work with. And for 2 years, that's what we had to deal with. Me editing the show exclusively, and Jeff Rocky shooting exclusively. And luckily enough, by the third year, we were able to get some funds in, and get some more funding, and the budget increased, and we were able to add some staff, and we were able to finally kind of produce this properly, produce this show properly. But back then I was exporting the show probably, 2 hours before it aired, and it was always a photo finish, but we always made the deadline, and it was it was always every show, every time we release a show, it's always just like we don't know how we pulled it off,
Right.
especially now over the last 2 years where we're pumping the stuff out every week. Every week we're just like, I don't know how we got to this point, because midweek I'm always concerned that it's not gonna happen. Yeah, we've been blessed.
Just for the folks, I mean, listen, anybody that's watching, I'm sure is familiar, but for the odd folks that aren't familiar, you used to do it. How long were they spaced out previously before we ultimately switched the last couple of years to weekly?
Yeah, the first 2 years were hour-long episodes every month. So there were eight episodes the first year because we didn't make the playoffs. And then the second year, that was the Brooklyn year, there was 9 episodes, and we had the one episode that kind of relived the Brooklyn series. And that's where my heart lies. So it's just, honestly, I love the fact that Last Dance has had so much success, because long form storytelling for me is what I've always wanted to do. And it kind of, the trend over the last 5 years or so is just like small content, micro content, pump it out quickly. And I know that there's value in that, obviously, especially with society today and how social media is. But my heart always lied with long form storytelling, because you want to be able to craft these stories and properly have all the details that you want to be able to tell this story properly. And now that Last Dance has had so much success, I feel like long form is about to become the new trend. I was always like everyone wanted to make the show shorter, but I always wanted to keep it long, and I wanted us to create the trend. But I love the fact that Last Dance has come out, and I feel like a lot of people now are going to be like, okay, we need to do long form. So it's nice for me personally.
The tough thing I would say, and I'm speaking as a viewer, is I'm going to create more work for you potentially here. I would love to see an hour-long weekly. And I don't know that that's even feasible, that's even possible. But to me, it's like, listen, obviously a major network show has a massive crew of people, and you guys just don't have that many people. But to your point, I guess I'm kind of, dipping my toe in both waters. I want the weekly content, so I'm willing to watch the 15 minutes, the 20 minutes, whatever it may be, but I'd rather see an hour, because I know I'm always wanting a little bit more. But in order to get more, I don't want to have to wait a month to see it, and that's kind of the catch-22, I guess, of this, unless obviously the crew gets so much bigger. But then do you lose some of your personal touch and some of the creative touch, and making sure you've got people that are executing your vision and Rocky's vision the way you guys want to see this thing, if suddenly the pool starts to get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. So again, catch-22 with all that. Let me go back again to kind of the early phases. How difficult was the buy-in from everybody? It's one thing to say Brian Colangelo wants it, Mark Eversley supports it, Dwayne Casey's involved. It's another thing for the players to trust the camera that seems to be there everywhere all the time. It's in the locker room, it's on the floor, it's in shoot-arounds, it's at practices, it's pregame, it's postgame. You guys are there, but you're not, because I know you've done a decent way of trying to kind of hide yourself in terms of the way that you shoot. But at the same time, if these guys didn't want to talk to you, the show wouldn't be what it is if there wasn't the buy-in from the players. And it's not just the same guys. There have been a lot of different dudes that have rolled through over the last 6 to 8 years.
That's the key, though. The year we started, it was a bit of a transition year. So guys like Landry Fields, Kyle Lowry, T. Ross, JV, it was their first year with the Raptors. So they didn't know anything else. Then you had guys like DeMar and Ed Davis that we had already built a relationship with because of all the content we were doing prior.
Right.
It was a little tougher for the vets, you know, guys like Andrea Bargnani and Jose Calderon to kind of get used to us. But like I said, the fact that they were in a transition period, we came pretty much at the perfect time. We had done stuff like 3-4 years prior. But when we went full blown on the show, it just became something that was part of it. And a lot of the players didn't really know any better, like I said. And then as you said, there's been a lot of turnaround over the last 8 years. But the key for us is we have always been one of the first interactions these guys have had when they arrive in Toronto. So it's whatever, if they get drafted or signed, we're usually there to pick them up at the airport. Guys who get drafted, we're there the first day they're in Toronto. Free agents that we pick up, that the Raptors pick up in the off season. We one shoot that I love to pitch to the guys is house hunting with the players, because it gives us a whole day with these guys, and it's just so casual, and you get to really know guys. That's how we got to really know Lou Williams and CJ Miles. And right from the beginning, these are vets who had been in the league 10 plus years. Those are the type of guys that you are kind of like, you don't know exactly how they're going to react. But when you have a day like that with them and they kind of see, you know, the vibe of me and Rocky, it just, you know, built a rapport right from the beginning. And they were pretty accepting with us for the entire year. So like you said, there's been a lot of turnaround, but the fact that there's been a lot of turnaround, we've been able to be the first interaction that they've had with the city of Toronto and the organization.
Do you feel like the access you're able to get is because of the fact that you know you guys are connected with the team specifically as well? Because you're seen then as an extension of the team. There's already an inherent trust with the guys that even if they don't know you personally, they know you're representing the team, versus somebody from Sportsnet or Global TV or TSN or anybody else coming and saying, hey, we got this great idea. We want to go, you know, follow around the Raptors' new draft pick and bring him to town and go watch him while he hunts for a house. And I would imagine that if Open Gym didn't exist, media relations or public relations would be, whoa. Yeah. We don't want cameras around. We don't want you following our guys, whatever. But because this is an in-house thing, again, like I say, there's that inherent trust with you guys. But then even if that opens the door, you guys still have to prove that trust and maintain that trust.
Yeah, there's been moments where it's like a player would be like kind of weary of the camera there, and then when another player will be like, oh, don't worry, he's part of us. He's part of the team. So you don't have to worry about like things being let out that probably shouldn't be let out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it definitely it obviously makes a world of difference if they know that you're basically, you know, part of the same company. And you know, it gives them that level of comfort, and at the same time too, you know, they know how lighthearted and easygoing a guy like Rocky is. Kudos to Rock, because he's in a lot of situations where, you know, it can get tense. It can get to the point where, you know, there's just certain moments where, you know, he's got to kind of navigate whether or not he should be in there and capturing certain things. So he gets put into a lot of sticky situations sometimes, and for the most part, you know, all the guys have been real cool with Rocky, and he's done. We both know how he is. He's just so, it's hard to get mad at the guy because he's like so easygoing and so he's got such a great sense of humor. So you know, I think that he's a huge part of why we're able to capture what we capture.
Well, to me, what he does so well, even just in a scrum setting, I can only imagine what it's like in the locker room. I mean, you guys have been given access to things that I haven't even seen. Obviously, I'm not in the locker room 5 minutes before tip-off or 5 minutes after the final buzzer and hearing the impassioned speech before the game, or the you know, paint peeling, pissed off coach who's going nuts on his players 5 minutes after the game. You guys have been there. And what I find interesting is the times where I'm either doing a broadcast and I just kind of happen to catch something out of the corner of my eye and it's Rocky, behind 20 people and I just sort of see this lens, or I'm in a scrum. And I will say, as a guy who used to think that, and to some extent maybe still do, used to think that I was this, amateur photographer. We all like to take pictures and whatever. I took some photography classes in college. I always appreciate the angles that he gets and the angles that you guys take, because hopefully none of my bosses are watching. I don't necessarily like this, like just square, centered, chest up, boom, a little bit of headroom. I like the thing that's zoomed in. Sometimes I like the side angle. I think it would be great if the sports networks did a little bit more of that and had some more of those unique angles and unique perspectives. And that's where I'll sometimes, when I'm in, kind of reporter role now and not doing the broadcast, and I'm in a scrum and I look over and there's like Rock down on his knees, shooting up through 5 cameras, finding the right angle. And it's like, because of that, you don't necessarily notice him. And I think that's disarming for a lot of guys, in that if they forget you're there, they're just themselves, and you get the real stuff that makes the show so good.
Yeah. The other thing, like I was talking about, how he's in these sensitive moments and these sensitive situations, and his personality allows guys to just be themselves. The other big part of the show is his talent and his skill, and the look and feel of the visuals and the images that we have in the show have always been a huge importance to myself and to Rocky. He takes such pride in every shot he takes. He gives me crap for throwing in some shaky camera work, or if he's repositioning the camera. But our standard for our visuals and the way we illustrate these stories are a huge part of the show. I do everything I can to refrain from using any broadcast angles or melt footage within the show. We strictly want to use our cameras because it gives us the cinematic look that I've always stuck with. And when Rocky started on the show with me, it was perfect, because he had the same vision that I had, and his talents are, that's what separates a lot of teams. Not to disrespect or anyone's craft and anyone's talent, but a lot of teams now and a lot of sports brands and teams are releasing this type of content using the same type of cameras and everything like that. But what separates Open Gym is Rocky's talent. So he's a big part of everything that we do, and he's the MVP for real.
All right, Landicho, before I get back to the chronology of things and get back on track, before I forget before the end of the show, this might be a perfect time, seeing as we're talking about Rocky. And obviously, Jeff and Jeff are the originals, folks. They are the creators. But the pool, the family, the crew has grown over the years. There are others involved in the show. So, again, before I maybe forget, I'll give you a chance here to shout out some of the other talented folks that have contributed to the show over the years, especially over the last few years.
Yeah, season 3, we really we opened up our kind of our roster, and it was a pleasure for myself because I was able to kind of just handpick a few people that I felt were going to be right for the role. So our roster, we work so well together. We're all so different. We have Binky Raimundo, who handles a lot of our footage and is one of our associate producers that kind of help out behind the scenes. Jenna, also, she was an intern that came on a couple years ago, who's been a huge shining light and a lifesaver for myself. She's taken a lot of responsibilities off my plate that have really, really helped me be able to just kind of focus in and hone in on certain things that I want to kind of focus on. Josiah Gelfand at the top that kind of keep the show running. They're the executive producers, and Randy Urban, the pretty boy of the crew. he also is a lifesaver for myself because he's able to go on a lot of the shoots that I'm not able to go on, and he provides. It's a nice balance between myself and Randy, where I'm a little bit more reserved and a little bit more laid back, and Randy's that outgoing. You know, he'll hunt down those key interviews, and you know, it's a great mix between the two of us. And then there's Aaron Terpstra, who I've been working with at NBA TV Canada for over 15 years now. I made sure that once I took when I decided to not become the full-time editor, I wanted to make sure Aaron was the full-time editor on this show. So he is another, obviously Rocky, like I said, with the visuals, but Aaron finishes it off with you know, he's our closer, and he finishes off the show and just makes it art, you know, and
Yeah.
all his cuts and his work on the show is just beautiful. I start the process. I start the early part of the editing, picking the music and picking the structure, but he finishes it off, and it just blows my mind every week as far as the quality and how good everything turned out. And like I said, he's another extension of myself, where I don't even really have to tell him stuff. He just knows what I'm looking for. And the team is just it's seamless and it's effortless, and that's all you can ask for in a team, right? So yeah, we got a good crew.
Was there ever any question about the show's continuance and survival when Brian Colangelo was gone and Masai Ujiri came in, or was it, hey, this is now part of the mix, it's ingrained, the same coach is still there, many of the core players are there, you've got support of management, you've got support of the network, or was there any sort of influx time?
There was obviously a question, but luckily for us, the year prior, the association had focused on the Denver Nuggets, and that was obviously Masai's year there, and he was used to the cameras being around. So when he got to Toronto, came back to Toronto, he already knew exactly what it meant to have this all access camera involved within the day-to-day, you know, schedule of the NBA team. So he was on board, and you know how progressive a thinker Masai is, and you know, he knew that this type of content also is real valuable, and he was on board right away. And you know, with Masai, like I worked with him once he came back to the Raptors. I've been working with him, you know, closely for so many other projects, and you know, he's on board. It's been the one time where I felt like we didn't know what was going to happen is when Coach Casey got let go. And when you have a guy, who knows, if they hired a guy like Coach Bud,
right,
came in, it can totally change everything. Even when Nick was hired, we still weren't exactly sure like what his thinking was of the show. But luckily enough for us, he was real comfortable with us, and he knew what obviously worked in our favors. He knew like how we work, and he was able to keep it going, and he agreed to keep it going. But if it wasn't Nick, who knows what could have happened with the show.
All right. Actually, you know what? Before I go to that, because I brought up Masai, how did that? And you just said that you knew him, you've worked with him, and there was that professional, let alone personal relationship. But how did the personal relationship grow outside of the professional to the point where I know the two of you have become close in terms of as friends, but then also him trusting you with his own baby in terms of Giants of Africa and Basketball Without Borders and everything that goes on with him in the offseason, especially going back home and bringing it to Africa, and you guys following him and creating your own separate episodes outside of Open Gym in the work you've done for him. How did all of that come about?
It just, you know, he obviously saw our work with Open Gym, and there's the one year, it was 5-6 years ago now, I feel like, where they decided they wanted to document and had a lot and wanted a lot more exposure for his camps in Giants with Giants of Africa. So one summer we went for the first time, and we just hit it off from there. Every year since then, I've been back to Africa, with the exception of 1 year when I had when Tiago was born. But yeah, he knows what I'm about. I know what he's about, and there's not much. Well, we don't need to say much to each other. We just know what he knows what he wants, and he's the type of person who he has his ideas, and he just looks for people to be able to kind of execute these ideas. And luckily for us, we've had that rhythm, and at any time he's looking for something, and he knows that I know what he wants, and it's just built from there. And then, yeah, like you said, he's a good friend, and my family loves him. We love each other's families. The kids love each other. It's real nice. And he's, we all know what Masai is about. It's just such an inspiration to be around him, especially back in Africa, just being exposed to that and seeing how passionate he is to want to, to want to create change. It's just, you just can't help but being a better person just by seeing that. And just, it helps me become a better man. Even just within my family, and just knowing, how much passion it takes to kind of guide the youth, and wanting them to be the best that they can be, just to be able to, provide opportunities for everybody, and create in a grander scale, like, just creating good in the world. So, Masai is Masai, you know what I mean?
It's got to be pretty wild for you, Jeff, to think about where you were as a kid. And where you are now. To think, forget about even college, but just growing up in the GTA and being around basketball and playing the game, and then getting to a point where you finish school, you get a chance to work for NBA TV Canada, Raptors TV back in the day, and then to see how the career evolves to the point where you get to come up with a new show, and then this new show grants you the access, and now you're on the road with the team, and now you're making personal connections with the president and general manager, and now you're traveling overseas to all sorts of different places, let alone to Africa. Like, where this show, let alone the career, has taken you, it's got to be a little bit surreal at times to see all of the different things you've done. And listen, man, I try not to watch the comments too much during the shows, with no disrespect to the audience, because as I've said a million times in these shows, I feel like if I'm not looking into the camera, that means I'm not making eye contact with you, and I don't want to be doing this and not looking at you. But everything I'm seeing coming in here from people is love Open Gym, original show, shout out to Jeff. I mean, people love this show. So to think of where it's brought you, literally on a global scale, it's gotta be kind of one of those pinch me moments to think about how your life and career has evolved.
I almost feel uncomfortable talking about it, because I can't even believe where I've kind of ended up, and how much I'm able to share stories, basketball stories with fans, because when I was growing up, I come from a Filipino family that just adores basketball. My dad is just a legend in the Filipino basketball community here. He's a referee, and still is involved with all the Filipino basketball programs to this day. And me growing up a huge basketball fan, first the Celtics, and then Jordan, and then, I know. It's just so funny how it's just like Lakers over Celtics, and everyone hates each other. But with Jordan, and then some other teams, and I was a big college fan too, and just Fab Five was also I'm a huge Fab Five fan. So being this massive basketball fan, and by the time I got to high school, you realize even though the Filipinos were like destroying everyone in elementary school, once you got to high school, you realize something real quick, that you stop growing and everyone else keeps on growing.
Hey, hold on a second. That must mean I'm partly Filipino then, man. Sorry.
No, but like your dream of being in the NBA kind of stopped as a player, and to see where I've ended up being as close to being a player as as you could possibly be. Like, I'm on the bus riding with these guys before a big game, and
Yeah.
I'm like, Kyle. I always sit like Kyle sits in the sixth seat, and I always sit one seat back from him and heading to a game, and those are the times where I kind of pinch myself, because you got a big game, big playoff game, and you're just like in the NBA Finals going into Game 6, you're driving across the bridge, and you're in the bus getting ready for this game, and you're just like part of everything. And those are the type of moments where you look back and you're like how did I get here? And for me, it's been a lot of things have lined up, and a lot of things have kind of just fallen into place at the exact right time. And I'm truly blessed. Everyone who knows me back in the day, who grew up with me, just can't believe where I'm at, because they know how much of a huge basketball nut I am. And to be able to share these stories with our team, our local team, because once the Raptors came into play, even though I was a huge basketball fan, once '95 hit, I was just die-hard Raptor fan. And to be able to bring this show, a unique show, to the fan base, it's just wild. And to know that some of the players, a lot of the players, just really have a vested interest in the show, and it allows them to have like a photo album of their career with the Raptors, and that will live on forever, and for me to be able to for myself and the whole crew to be able to provide that for these guys, it's just such a blessing. It's like growing up, you can't imagine yourself being the lead producer of a documentary show for your local team. You never dreamt about this kind of stuff. So just to be able to be here and look back, and obviously everything really just culminated last year with that championship. So it's been wild. It's hard to like express sometimes, because you just feel so, you almost feel like you don't even want to like share that story, because it's just like it's hard to kind of fathom.
All right, you mentioned the photo book, the memory book that guys have via this show. You've talked about the storytelling. I've got some off the top of my mind that I'm going to bring up here. You can give me a couple of tidbits, as much or as little as you want in these ones, and then you tell me about some of your favorites if I don't touch on them. But as much as the show existed long before this, and there was a lot of quality stuff, one of the ones that stands out for me first and foremost, and I think for a lot of people, is the Rudy Gay trade, and everything that went along with that show. And that's where we if we never saw it before, and we did, but if we didn't realize it before, that's when you truly saw the access and how instant things were, and let alone then the personal side of the trade.
Yeah, and that obviously hands down is probably the most iconic and most memorable, scene and shoot and episode that we've ever done, that I've ever done. And just everything involved, just everything with that day was just so crazy. Like we had gone to, Alcatraz a couple of days before with Quincy and AG, just for the guys to find out the way they found out. I remember I was on the first bus. Rudy was scheduled to be on the second bus. Going to the Laker game, and we were just pulling up, and I got a notification of a tweet where I was tagged in, and it said, "I hope Open Gym gets all this footage right now." And I'm like, what are they talking about? And then that's when all the tweets came out about the trade. And I looked over at Rocky, he was behind me, and I'm like, shoot everything. Do not stop. And sure enough, it's still to this date, the most fascinating footage that we've gotten, because it was, I haven't seen anything like that in any, with any athlete or any team to that level, where we're seeing the reactions of players to getting traded real time.
Yeah.
To this day, for me, I still haven't seen anything quite like it. So for us, it's something that it's a feather in our cap, because it's you know, some of the most fascinating stuff that we've been able to kind of see with an NBA team.
I remember Aaron Gray coming out onto the floor, and quite
Yeah.
honestly, Jeff, I don't remember if I was the one that told him or if I was one of the first people that talked to him after the fact, because he was blown away. It's like he didn't know. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think he still went and warmed up for at least 10 or 15 minutes just because he had his gear on, and then went back to the locker room. Another one that stands out for me, and it seems like a lot of them are the trade ones, because again, you're getting the access and you're seeing
it's so raw, you know?
Yeah, the personal reaction that nobody is ever privy to. But now, honestly, I'm forgetting the chronological order. Maybe I'm going. I can't remember if it's before or after. To be honest, my mind gets a little mushy right now. But when Calderon was dealt as well, and that was in Atlanta, and seeing the players' reactions and Ed Davis and all that, that's another one that stands out. But let me fast forward a bit here, because unfortunately time's creeping up on us a little bit for the end of the hour. Another trade, but in a different fashion. When you finally got a chance to hook up with DeMar after the Kawhi trade and after the Raptors went back, I mean, what was that like? Because he obviously took it extremely tough, and there was a lot of the you know, I don't want to, it's not fair to call it drama, but there were a lot of hurt feelings, and there was a lot of tense moments over the course of the last 12, 18 months, et cetera. And for him to finally kind of come to grips with and be comfortable with what went down, how things happened, but then to see it kind of come full circle.
Yeah, that obviously really, for myself, because DeMar, I had built, he was pretty much the closest as far as the footage that we've gathered throughout his career, and he's probably if Open Gym had a logo, it would be DeMar, because he started it all with his one rookie documentary that he gave the green light on, and he was, as far as buy-in with Kyle and DeMar buying into the show, it obviously it bodes well for us, and the rest of the team will buy in as well and follow the lead. But when he got traded, for me, it was obviously tough, just like it was tough for everybody else. And I hadn't spoken to him until we saw him in San Antonio. And it's everything about it is, just like we all talk about it. It was uncomfortable, but we understood why it was done. And obviously you can't argue with the trade, but with DeMar, it's I have so much footage of DeMar. One of these days, we'll see what we can do. But he knows I can. He always joked with me how I can end his career if I were to release some of this stuff. But I think I could really enhance his career with some of the gold that we have. But yeah, I've got a lot of stuff with DeMar, and hopefully one day maybe we can tell a huge story with all the stuff that we have, and we might have our own last dance at some point as far as Open Gym and looking back on the road and how we got to the championship. So we've got a lot of stuff that's sitting there waiting to be unleashed at some point.
I mean, I'm sure you've already thought this, but in the midst of this lockdown, this pandemic, and whatever else, I've got to imagine you could go back and build either new episodes or almost like extensions of already existing episodes by adding that additional footage, or by putting together, as I know I've already seen some of the smaller snippets on Raptors.com and on Raptors Instagram and Twitter and whatnot, YouTube page, the sort of little mini docs that have been created with Fred VanVleet week or Kyle Lowry week, with all the footage that you guys have, let alone that the networks have. So I'm sure that's got to be something that you guys have already thought of. And I know you released little blooper reels and snippets that it's got to be endless, the things that you guys could ultimately release with all that footage you have. One of the other ones that again, my chronology is all messed up, but I meant to bring up prior to the DeMar one. CJ Miles was certainly a lovable guy. listen, he was very easy from a professional standpoint to get along with,
Mm-hmm.
well loved in the locker room. Unfortunately, he kind of joins a long list of a lot of guys that it just didn't click
Mm-hmm.
on the floor the way that the Raptors had ultimately hoped it would in terms of between the lines, but a great guy to deal with, and another guy that you got to know away from the floor, and the access that he granted you guys to his personal life and the birth of his child is yet again another example of something that we just don't normally see on other networks, and you guys were first, like, front and center.
Yeah, that if the Rudy Gay trade is obviously number one, but number two for myself personally is the CJ Miles episode with the birth of his daughter Ava. You know, like I said, it kind of went back to that rapport we had built that day when we spent house shopping. But the fact that Open Gym had already like a resume, and we were able to kind of show him what we were all about, the sell was a lot easier. And once we pitched the idea, he was on board, and his wife was on board. And yeah, being able to bring a camera into the hospital, you know, a couple of days after your first child is born, come to your home, you know, a few days after, you know, your child is a few days old. It's just remarkable to be able to kind of capture that, and the way the episode kind of came together as well. I'm extremely proud of how it looked and how it all came together. And I remember I had asked him, because he's a writer and he's a big hip hop head, and me and him, that was our a thing that we connected with right away, as far as like the same type of hip hop that we listen to. And he's a writer and an MC. I asked him if he can, you know, write something to Ava, like a little letter, and he hadn't gotten around to it. And we were at the home, and I asked him, you know, do you think did you get the letter done? And he hadn't done it. So I was just like, why don't you just, you know, take a piece of paper, kind of look like you're writing, because we're going to call the episode Dear Ava. Maybe just look like you're writing something, and then we'll use that as like visuals and some lyrical B-roll type of thing. And he just wrote Dear Ava, and then just kept going and wrote this entire love letter to his daughter. And it was just beautiful. And then he read it on camera and all that. And yeah, CJ's so bright and so articulate, and you know, he's very thoughtful in everything that he says. So yeah, it was a pleasure being able to do that episode with them, and them having that also to have for themselves, like I said,
Right.
about the photo album, to always have. And Ava, you know, when she's, you know, 15, 16, she's going to be able to look at that and say, wow, like that's really cool that they have that, you know, captured.
All right, we've only got a couple minutes left here. I want to ask you, last year, you referenced it obviously a couple of times. We can't escape it. And who would want to escape it? The first ever championship. How do you go from, all right, prior summer, DeMar for Kawhi, regular season, load management, the highs and the lows of the year, Dwayne Casey out, Nick Nurse in, game one loss to Orlando, 4 straight over the Magic, back and forth against the Sixers, you know, down moments for Embiid, high moments for Embiid, Kawhi with his heroics, game 7 the shot, down 0-2 to the Bucks, double overtime, staring down the barrel of down 0-3 and it's probably done, to ripping off 4 straight, get into the finals, taking a lead in the finals, going up 3-1, KD injury, Fred VanVleet cut open, I mean, dropping 3 balls after Freddie Jr. is born, game 6, the drama in the last 10 seconds, let alone the last 4 seconds, championship won, the Masai issues with the cops, the celebration in the locker room, the champagne popping, the flight to Vegas, the parade. How in the hell do you put all of that together and edit that damn thing
I don't know.
into an episode? Like, it's like, how in the world do you put that together?
I don't know. The thing about that last episode, so we did like an hour, pretty much an hour long episode for each round. And I really, when I look back at some of those episodes, I really love the way it kind of played out. The Philly one I really love because we got to look back on the series and the parallels between, you know, '01 with Alvin and just how it all kind of just came together. But that last episode with that focused on the finals, I don't know how. I was so nervous as far as, you know, wanting to be able to do this championship justice. And, you know, for a lot of, it was touch and go for a lot of the time through the edits. But once the final cut came, I looked at it, I'm like, okay, I think we did okay. But I was nervous that we weren't going to do this entire run justice. And by the sounds of, you know, all the fans and all the comments and not to toot our own horn, but we're nominated for an Academy Award that's going to be announced on Monday for that episode. It looks like,
dude, I didn't even know that. So
yeah, so
congratulations.
CSAs, thank you. The CSAs they're announcing the winners on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're part of the best program, sports program nominations. So yeah, it looks like we did an okay job. I don't know. I don't know how, as it's happening, like you said, all those moments, like, I don't know how it's just so hard to visualize how it's gonna come down in an edit sometimes when you're living it and living in the moment and seeing all these remarkable things happen, all those magical things happen. So yeah, I don't know. It just happened.
Listen, we've got like 2 minutes left. It's not going to be fair to me to bring up another story because I don't want to get cut off at 11 o'clock, and it's a hard out at 11. Instagram kicks you off, so I'm going to end it again. Yeah, it's like you have no choice. The only way you have to, like, shut it down and restart it again. So we maybe could get you back again another month or two. I mean, let's hope we're out of this pandemic. We actually have games to call and whatnot, and to, you know, shoot documentaries for. But I won't get into any more stories because we won't finish them. I'm going to end it where I started for folks that just join us or whatever. Even if it's embarrassing to you, I'm going to say it again, folks. After watching The Last Dance, I said it to my wife. I said it on Twitter. I said it on the air. I said it multiple times. We get The Last Dance every week, every other week, every month, whatever it is, for the last X number of years since Open Gym started. That is what we've been getting all the time. So as good as The Last Dance was, man, we have been getting it constantly for years. Kudos to you, to Rocky, to the crew. You know, I love that I've been able to be a very small part of it over the years, and I can't wait to continue on and to see the show. Because listen, that first episode, when we come back from this lockdown, I'm sure it's going to be a hell of an episode too, just trying to get people back to, you know, that normal life again. So I appreciate you doing this, Landicho. Thanks for doing this, man, and all the best to you and your family.
Yeah, you too, man. You guys stay safe. Shout out to my wife and our kids, and we, as you know, we had the birth of our newest son, Shai Lorenzo, who was born on May 9th, and you know, it's exciting times, and it's obviously nice to be home at this time with the newborn. So, you know, love everyone, love you, E, and we'll see you soon, man.
All right, man. I appreciate this. And everybody tuning in tonight, thanks for this. And we'll be back next week with 3 new episodes. Thanks for tuning in again to Midweek with Eric Smith and Landicho. All the best. See you later, folks.